Sarah Ferguson is broke, in hiding, and jumping between the homes of old lovers while carrying 3 separate phones because she's terrified someone is tracking her every move. This isn't tabloid exaggeration or speculation run wild. This is the extraordinary reality currently unfolding around the former Duchess of York, according to multiple sources close to her situation. The woman who once smiled confidently at palace events, who spent decades insisting she'd mastered the art of staying royal adjacent despite her messy divorce, is now reportedly moving in shadows from one private residence to another, staying with wealthy friends who absolutely do not want anyone knowing she's there. And here's where it gets truly eyebrow-raising. Some of the people allegedly offering her shelter are former boyfriends, men she dated decades ago, who've somehow remained loyal enough to provide refuge when the rest of her world appears to be crumbling. It's a staggering reversal for someone who built an entire public persona around being the happiest divorced woman in Britain, still living with her ex-husband Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, still playing the royal game even after being officially cast out. Because now, if these reports hold any truth, even that bizarre partnership has fractured badly, leaving Sarah more isolated than she's been in 30 years. For months now, Sarah Ferguson has essentially vanished from public view. No cheerful television interviews, no charity appearances with that practiced smile she's deployed so many times before, no carefully staged photographs reminding everyone she still exists in royal orbit. Instead, there's been an unsettling silence, broken only by whispers and unconfirmed sightings. She's been placed in Dubai one week, Switzerland the next, then Ireland, then various unnamed private estates scattered across Europe. Nobody seems entirely certain where she actually is from one week to another, and that uncertainty itself tells a story. According to claims circulating through British media, she's essentially embarked on what one source bluntly called a secret sofa surfing world tour, not glamorous jet-setting or official royal business, but quietly shuffling between homes owned by loyal friends with money, privacy, and most importantly, discretion. That alone would raise questions, but then came the detail about the phones that really crystallized how desperate her situation may have become. Multiple sources claim she's been rotating between 3 different mobile phones because she genuinely believes someone might be tracing her location. Whether that fear is grounded in reality or reflects paranoia born from stress, it paints a picture of someone deeply anxious and profoundly unsettled. This isn't confident living. This is someone who feels hunted, cornered, uncertain who to trust. And then there's the physical transformation people are whispering about. One source used a word that immediately grabbed attention: dishevelled. They claim Sarah looks really low right now, that she stopped maintaining her hair color, let her roots grow out, abandoned the cosmetic treatments she once relied on, and appears nothing like the polished public figure she worked so hard to project for decades. Now, some people will dismiss talk about hair appointments and beauty treatments as shallow gossip, but in royal circles appearance has always carried weight. Looking immaculate sends a message about status, control, confidence. Looking like you've given up sends an entirely different message, one about defeat and surrender, and the financial whispers aren't flattering either. Sources claim she's been asking friends, "How am I going to get through this?" while simultaneously complaining she's completely broke. One person even joked that friends wouldn't be shocked to discover her selling designer handbags on some online resale platform. Whether that's literal truth or dramatic exaggeration doesn't really matter, because either way it's language nobody associates with royal privilege or even royal adjacent comfort. For years, Sarah Ferguson seemed almost indestructible in the strangest way. She survived scandal after scandal that would have buried most people permanently. Back in the 1990s, there were crushing debt headlines and humiliating tabloid exposés. Later came murky business controversies that raised serious questions about her judgment. Then in 2010, she was caught in a sting operation, appearing to offer journalists access to Andrew in exchange for cash, a moment so damaging it should have ended her public life entirely. Yet somehow, impossibly, she kept bouncing back. There were book deals and memoir releases, television interviews where she played the reformed character, charity work that gave her purpose and headlines, smiling photo calls that reminded everyone she still had connections. She always seemed to find another act, another angle, another way to stay relevant and stay afloat. This time feels fundamentally different, because the reports aren't about reinvention or comeback strategies. They're about retreat and possible collapse. There's no grand plan being whispered about, no new project promising redemption, just stories of hiding, independence, and fear. And then there's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor himself, the man at the center of Sarah's life for over 3 decades despite their divorce. Their relationship fascinated people precisely because it made so little conventional sense. They divorced in 1996 but never really separated, living together for years afterward, presenting themselves as best friends who simply couldn't stay married, but couldn't stay apart either. Sarah defended him publicly through every scandal, stood beside him when most people would have run, and together they projected this image of an unconventional but genuinely unbreakable bond. Now insiders are saying that bond has finally cracked under pressure. They're reportedly still in occasional contact, but no longer united in the way they once appeared, no longer presenting that united front against the world. If that's accurate, it may represent the single biggest shift in this entire story, because whatever else happened in Sarah's chaotic life, Andrew was always her foundation, her base of operations, her safety net. If she's now staying away from him, moving between other people's homes instead of relying on their shared arrangement, that tells you just how damaged things have become. Many observers believe the Jeffrey Epstein scandal fallout sits squarely behind all of this upheaval. Andrew's catastrophic 2019 BBC Newsnight interview didn't just damage his reputation, it obliterated whatever public standing he had left. His explanations were widely mocked, his justifications rejected, his denials disbelieved. In the aftermath, his military titles were stripped away, his royal patronages removed, and his public role essentially eliminated. Even after legal settlements were reached and official matters closed, the stain never lifted, the association never faded. Anyone tied closely to Andrew risked being dragged down by proximity, and Sarah Ferguson was more closely tied to him than virtually anyone. She may not have caused that scandal, she may have played no direct role in any of it, but she lived right next to the wreckage, and that proximity has consequences. According to sources, she also feels intensely bitter and betrayed by other members of the royal family. The claim is that she feels completely shut out now with no realistic pathway back inside, not even to the margins where she used to operate. If true, it's a familiar complaint from royal exiles throughout history. Useful to the institution when convenient, forgotten and abandoned when they become troublesome or embarrassing. But perhaps the most deliciously dramatic element in all of this is who Sarah has allegedly turned to for shelter and support. One name that surfaced is Count Gatto della Gherardesca, an Italian aristocrat she reportedly dated back in the late 1990s after her divorce from Andrew. A source claims she's been staying somewhere castle-like with this Italian count looking after her, and if that's accurate, it sounds like something pulled straight from a romance novel. Then there's Paddy McNally, the former motor racing executive she dated seriously before ever meeting Andrew, a relationship that was apparently quite significant before royal life intervened. Reports from last month suggested she'd been staying at his Wiltshire property, and he's also said to own homes in Verbier and Saint-Tropez, giving plenty of discreet options for someone desperate to stay out of public sight. Think about how extraordinary that trajectory looks. A woman who married into the British monarchy, who spent decades leveraging that connection for relevance and income, now depending not on institutional support or official royal mechanisms, but on old romances and wealthy friends to provide basic shelter and privacy. And yet in another way it's very Sarah Ferguson, because she's always relied more on personal charm and social connections than formal power. Not palace machinery, not constitutional authority, just personal relationships and the goodwill of people who remain fond of her despite everything. That seems to be her safety net once again. Now, possibly the only safety net she has left. The real question hovering over all of this is whether we're watching temporary hiding or permanent exile. Is she simply lying low until media attention shifts elsewhere and she can re-emerge with some new project or narrative? Or is this the clearest sign yet that the world she spent decades orbiting has finally decisively closed its doors? With Sarah Ferguson, you can never completely rule anything out because she's reappeared before when people assumed she was finished, pulled off resurrections that seemed impossible. But this latest chapter feels harsher, lonelier, and far less glamorous than anything she'd want associated with her name. There's no triumphant spin here, no clever angle that makes it all seem manageable or even interesting. Just reports of a woman in her 60s moving quietly between other people's homes, looking disheveled, carrying multiple phones out of fear, and asking how she'll get through whatever comes next. So what do you think? Is Sarah Ferguson ultimately the victim of royal rejection, punished for loyalty to a man the institution decided to abandon? Or has the bill finally come due for decades of chaos, controversy, poor judgment, and scandal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more royal updates with all the latest twists and details, make sure you subscribe.